Sounds good. Everyone got what they need? Okay. Hope everyone had a good week. And we are excited to lesson 2 of this learning journey, of this Tanya program. And once again, going to cover, last week we covered chapters 1 to 8 through Tanya. In tonight's lesson, we're going to cover chapters 9 through 15. Okay? The next step as we move along in this program of Tanya. Once again, Tanya is probably the most important philosophical, psychological, Jewish book dealing with the soul, dealing with Jewish psychology, mystical book within the last few hundred years. And it's really, today, the Tanya is an entire bookshelf of books. In fact, if you look here, my bookshelf, the top shelf, most of those books on that top shelf are Tanya, are commentaries, explanations, etc. If you remember last week, I spoke about how my grandfather's book was a pioneering book in that, but today already Tanya is really out there and it's very hugely, very commonly studied, and it's a super important book. So we're going to continue on that. And before we go there, let's just have a quick recap, okay? So last week we laid out 2 souls. Discovered that we each have 2 souls within us. Animal soul, the godly soul. Let's describe the animal soul. What's the animal soul? What is it? How does it function?
Survival.
Selfish. Survival. Nice. What else?
Vitality.
Vitality. Physical vitality. Exactly.
Instinct.
Again?
Instincts.
Instinctive. Beautiful. Okay, so that's this animal soul. It's selfish. It's motivated by instinctive desires and whatever is for its good towards survival. And we need that animal soul. Keeps us going. On the other side, we've got a second soul, which is the godly soul. The godly soul, let's describe it. What does it want?
What's meaning?
Meaning. Okay. Good. Beautiful. Specific kind of meaning? Spiritual meaning. It wants to be connected to God. One desire only. It wants to be connected to God. It wants to feel close. And it's, anything that's in that category, godly soul. Now, we discussed about the anatomy of the souls, and we got it on page 26, table 1. Just quick recap. Oh, sorry, it's actually not there. It's not there. That's something else. Table anatomy of the souls. What's this? Both of them have the same anatomy. What? 2 parts to it. 10 faculties, split into 2 parts. Anyone remember? There's the emotions and the cognitive abilities. Exactly. There's the
Reason.
intellect and emotions. Yeah?
Yes.
Reason. Exactly. If you want to just see that inside, let's look in page
11.
11. Okay, beautiful. Yeah, you'll also see it in page 9. That's the sphirot, the faculties of the soul. The famous imagery of the sephirot, which are the supernal sephirot, which are God's kind of interfaces with this world. Mirrored in that, we talk about us being created in the imagery of God. Our soul has those same properties and it interacts, and its personality is split into 3 cognitive, 7 emotive. Okay. Thank you, Nathaniel. Then we spoke about, besides for the soul itself, the soul expresses itself with 3, what are they called? Garments. What are the 3 garments?
Thoughts, words, and the actions.
Thought, speech, and action. Exactly. Machshava, dibur, and maaseh. Thought, speech, and action. 3 garments of the soul. I'm realizing I'm one book short, Amy. It's okay. Lubab, when you share with Amy, yeah? Okay, so the soul expresses itself with 3 garments because the soul itself on its own has no way of expression. It needs 3 garments, which are the soul's expression. It expresses itself through thought, through speech, and through action. And these are the kind of the lexicon that we covered last week in terms of understanding the anatomy of the soul, understanding how the soul relates and expresses itself. If we want to take a look at table 1, page 26, 10 faculties, which are our insides. What do you want? That's the 10 faculties. Yourself, your composition of your soul, those are all who you are, okay? The garments are not about who you are, they are your outsides. They're what you do. They're how you express yourself. And 2 very different elements. We all know we could be one thing. Does that mean that's what we do? No. And that's where the splits up between the makeup of the soul itself, the 10 faculties, and the 3 things of expression. Okay, this is all a recap. Table 2, we can see the conflict. The inevitable conflict which we laid out last week, which is that ultimately, because you have a godly soul and its 10 faculties, and you have an animal soul and its 10 faculties, and the godly soul wants what it wants, and the animal soul wants what it wants, how's that going to work out? There's only one set of outsides, and there's 2 sets of insides. So each one is vying for control of the person. How are you going to express? Is the godly soul going to express, or the animal soul is going to express? That's where we pretty much left out last week. And tonight, to get us started, let's get into the animal soul and godly soul mindset. Page 28, we're going to do a quick role play, okay? So we want to, someone's going to be the godly soul, someone's going to be the animal soul, okay? And we're going to act out the conversation going on here. We have a godly soul up. Who's going to be godly soul? Amy, I think you need more background knowledge, so you can't even vie for this one. I didn't send you your recording. Still coming. Who's up for godly soul? Adam's godly soul. Who's up for animal soul? Nathaniel, animal soul. Okay. Now, just remember, the success of your role playing is this. You got to stick to your script. Meaning to say, you are a godly soul. You're an animal soul. The closer you stick to your script, the more successful you are in your role play. What does the godly soul want? One thing. Wants to be connected to God. What does the animal soul want? It wants to feel good. It wants to selfish, survive, anything around that. It's not into the abstract and it's very concrete. It's not about religious, none of that stuff. Don't give me that religious conversation. Whereas the godly soul's opposite of that. Okay. What's the case? Okay. So let's read together. You asked your neighbor to lend you his hedge clippers last week. Although he wasn't using them, he refused to let you have them. This weekend, just as you finished using your leaf blower, he comes over and asks you to borrow your leaf blower because his is broken. Okay, so again, I got my hedge clippers, and last week you didn't let me borrow them, even though you weren't using. This week, you come over and you want to borrow my leaf blower because yours is broken, and you've just asked me that question. And the conflict begins. How am I going to respond? Now, both of you are talking to me. Why are you talking to me? Why are you not talking to each other?
But you're the one that's saying yes.
Correct, because I'm the person.
Where each part of your brain.
Exactly. You're right now having this conversation. You're feeding me your voice. You're feeding me your voice. And each of you are trying to convince me and win me over. Okay, godly soul.
Of course, you should do the right thing and let him use your blower, your leaf blower.
Of course, you should be using that, but just how much is it paying?
Okay, charge it. Nice. Nothing goes for free. Yeah.
Of course, your neighbor, even though they blow it, you don't need it. And besides, maybe this can help encourage a better relationship between you and him in the future.
Okay. Beautiful. One.
As I said before, this might help me progress myself. So establish a commercial relationship.
Okay. I like. Very focused on the money. Yeah.
The longevity of your relationship with your neighbor and maybe in the community will be about you feeling good and doing the right thing, which is letting you use your own.
Okay.
You don't need it. It's been used.
Good.
I'm out of arguments.
You've given in.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. This all happens in a series of split seconds. In my brain, as that question's asked, my neighbor says, "Can I borrow your leaf blower?" Suddenly, two voices pop up: godly soul's voice and animal soul's voice. Each of them wants to be heard. Now, you realize how they're talking different languages? You're talking the language of do the right thing. You know, it's a mitzvah. Help another person. And you're talking the language of animal soul of what am I getting from it? You know, I give something, I want something, especially since the history. They don't talk to each other. Each one is living in their own world. Each one has their own set of priorities. Each one has its motivation and its drives. Okay? And
It's interesting, by the way. I don't know who's Nathaniel is saying a little bit behind me that way. But I of course heard him.
Good.
But I didn't even turn to look at it as well as now as you're saying that. So I guess that's how it
Right.
is within us.
because you're in your own world and
Right.
you're not interested in what he has to say. You're interested in what you have to say. Exactly. You've got your motivation, your drive. It's not about
You won't.
you want. Okay. You put it on easy box. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, how do we decide? Right? That's split section, how to decide. Now, last week we laid out the conflict. We laid out the conflict, we got the terms, we started understanding what these two voices, how to make up their voices, each one's motivation and its drives. This week, we're going to talk about the framework for navigating that conflict and dealing that conflict and how to go about it. Like I spoke last week. I'll turn that off. Not disturb. Seem to work. Okay. So as I spoke last week was really laying out the terms, getting to familiar with the language. This week we're going to start talking about the tools. How does it all play out? Okay. We're going to start with some very interesting imagery from that the Tanya brings from King Solomon. Let's take a look together. Text 1, page 29. Adam, want to lead us?
The small city. The body is called the small city. Colette, Ecclesiastes 9:14. Just as two kings wage war over a city, which each wishes to capture and rule, so the two souls, the godly soul and the vitalizing animal soul, wage war against each other over the body and all its limbs. The godly soul's will and desire is that it alone rule and direct the person. And the animal soul desires the very opposite. Tanya chapter 9.
Okay, beautiful. So the imagery is there's the body, which is this small city, two kings are vying for rulership. Now, important to realize each one wants complete domination over the person, but wants completely rule the person. The animal soul wants what it wants completely. Godly soul wants what it wants completely. If you're gonna talk to the animals, the animal soul is gonna say to the godly soul, just hold on a second, just chill out for a minute. You know, you're getting all hung up, connection to God. Chill out, take off half an hour and eat some nice cheesecake. What's the godly soul gonna respond? You crazy? For half an hour, I'm gonna be disconnected. For half an hour, I'm gonna give up my life. I'm gonna give up. I'm gonna be dead for half an hour. What? There's no point existing if I'm not connected to God. Let's flip the conversation. The godly soul to the animal soul says, hold on a second. Don't constantly just worry about yourself. Just put yourself aside. Think about another person. Stop being so selfish. Do something just for the reasons that it's right, because it's the right thing to do. What does the animal soul say?
Why?
Why? That's suicidal. Why would I ever, that's like giving up myself, my very existence is all about me and what I need for myself, giving up and putting myself aside. That's not in my world. Doesn't exist. So each one neither can make the compromise. Each one, in order for it to be satisfied and its will to be carried through, it needs full control over the person. It's not happy with any kind of compromise that someone else is coming on and presenting another point of view, which is completely heretical to its worldview, so to speak. Okay, so if we have no system for navigating this, so we're going to have sometimes random successes. Sometimes we'll do the right thing. Sometimes we won't do the right thing, and we'll do the selfish thing. I woke up on this side, I woke up on that side. We can navigate life like that. What we're going to learn tonight is 3 important key terms which you need to pull out from tonight's lesson. Okay? 3 personas that the Tanya is going to lay out for us, how they navigate this conflict. Those 3 terms are as follows: a tzaddik, a rasha, and a beinoni. Now, I don't know if you've heard those terms before, but first things first is don't translate those terms. Whatever you know in terms of those terms meaning, in terms of translation, forget about what those terms mean in translation, because that's not going to help. It's not going to be helpful for us. We really need to understand, what does the Tanya mean when it's saying tzaddik? What's the rasha and what's the beinoni? Okay? This is going to be key, because these 3 personas navigate the conflict within a conflict very differently. Now, let's start by first looking at the tzaddik. Okay, so look at figure 1 on page 30. How does this is a picture of a tzaddik. What do you say? Interesting guy? Huh? Anyone feels that they're a tzaddik here? Yeah. Not yet. At the end of the course, maybe. Or maybe not. We'll find out. Okay. What has the tzaddik done here? The tzaddik is not using any tricks to sublimate his animal soul. He's not like doing the right thing because he's telling the animal soul, you know what? Right now, we're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and that's it. The tzaddik, based on this image that you're seeing here, the tzaddik doesn't have an animal soul. Whoa, that's pretty extreme. What does that mean, he doesn't have an animal soul? He has no selfish desires, nothing. His one and only purpose of existing and living, the tzaddik, is to be connected with God. He has 0 desires to go and look after himself at the expense of doing the right thing to do. It doesn't even pop into it. It's not even an urge. It doesn't exist in his world. Now, just to point out what we're talking about, a tzaddik is someone who's changed his insides. That's power. Whoa, that's crazy. His inner world, he's completely done away with an entire part of his inner world, one of his souls, the animal soul, and it doesn't even exist in the tzaddik's world. It's completely changed. For example, if there's a piece of chocolate cake sitting on the table, okay? The chocolate cake to the tzaddik, he has 0 desire to eat chocolate cake because it tastes good. He has 0 desire to chocolate or anything. He has 1 desire. Is it a mitzvah right now to eat this chocolate cake? Am I helping someone somehow by eating this piece of chocolate cake? Is this what God wants for me right now? If the answer is yes, I'm interested. If it's no, this chocolate cake has no relevance in my world. It doesn't talk to me at any level. Do you know anyone like this? No? I don't need it. Okay? Now, what are we talking about here? This tzaddik is, you're going to ask me how he survives the tzaddik. Based on what we said until now, you need an animal soul, which is really your motivation, which is going to be your getting out there, doing the things that you need just to even look after yourself, right? Okay, we're not even going to get into the tzaddik. We're not, the Tanya dedicates one chapter for the tzaddik. The whole book, chapter 10, is the tzaddik's chapter. You know why the tzaddik Tanya doesn't dedicate much of the time for the tzaddik?
It's ideal.
Because
It's ideal.
It's rare.
it's extremely rare. It's extremely special.
Because people don't die.
And it's impossible for the average person. The average person, it's not in his ability. It's not in your ability to completely change yourself to such a degree. It's just, this is someone who is living at a whole nother level, at a whole nother place. And it's not like you can work in yourself and get to this point. This is someone who's kind of been endowed with a spiritual gift to have such a thing. That's a tzaddik. That's how the Tanya describes a tzaddik. Let's take a look at one of the descriptions of a tzaddik. Text 2, page 30. Sanel, go for it.
When a person wages war against the animal soul to the extent that he banishes and eradicates its evil from inside of himself, he is called a tzaddik.
Completely eradicated this from him. Let's take another description of a tzaddik. Text 3, page 31. Giorgio, Victoria, one of you?
You want to go?
Right.
A tzaddik despises mere gratification of the physical appetite because of his great love of God, which is mutually exclusive with the pursuit of pleasure for its own sake.
Okay. So when the tzaddik sees the chocolate cake, does it turn him on? What does the expression that Tanya uses to describe him watching someone eat chocolate cake because because it's so delicious?
He despises it.
He despises it. Like, that's how you're interacting with chocolate cake, just because you're satisfying your own selfish need. That's disgusting. How could you do that? That's how the tzaddik looks at the chocolate cake. Wow, pretty crazy. Now, is the tzaddik happy?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. Huh? What do you do? In his own way, yes. Okay.
But he's also not unhappy.
He's also not unhappy. Okay. So
Maybe not
what do you mean?
in our interpretation, because we interpret happiness as having a lot of pleasures.
So you're saying he's happy from other things.
It's not fulfilled, but just normally people describe happiness as when they have a lot of things they can enjoy just for the sake of enjoying. So in that he is not happy, but he's fulfilled, and it's probably better than happy.
Okay. So I would say we have to remember the tzaddik. We've been thinking about the conflict until now. Two sets of insides, one set of outsides, looking for which the two sets of insides are each trying to gain mastery of you to express. That tzaddik doesn't have a conflict. So if the tzaddik's going to go unhinged and he's going to be on fire and he just wants to go crazy and uninhibited, what's it going to look like? He's going to just be on fire and passionate about serving God and be extremely joyful and taking celebration in that and completely in a state of ecstasy from his service of God. He could absolutely be extremely happy. But like you said, not happiness from the same things that we typically think that we need to get happiness from. This is happiness from a whole other set of values and priorities.
But
No struggle there.
But the observation or the view that he's not happy because he doesn't have the normal societal things making a determination with a different toolkit than the tzaddik possesses
Excellent.
from herself.
Exactly. That's the animal soul looking at the tzaddik and saying, "You're happy. You're crazy. You can't have a good piece of chocolate cake. Yeah, you'll be happy." And it's the animal, the godly soul.
I guess only another tzaddik would be able to really have an idea
Correct.
if that other being is happening.
Right. And it's fair to say.
Speculation.
So a lot of unhappiness actually comes from selfishness. If you have completely eradicated any feelings of selfishness, I think the tzaddik is extremely happy because it's all about a life of connected with God.
Peace of mind.
But the tzaddik, we're not going to get bogged down by the tzaddik. One chapter, the Alter Rebbe it's not within our abilities. Guess what? Changing your insides, getting rid of any instinctive, selfish desires. That's not who we are.
Those are modeled after perfection.
That's truly perfection. We can't attain perfection. And inside perfection, we can't attain inside perfection.
But in theory, it's possible.
Is it possible in theory?
Yes.
I would say it's only possible if you've gotten if there was a gift that this person should be a tzaddik. And the text in the Tanya describes that God saw that tzaddikim were few, and He placed a few in every generation. That was kind of He sprinkled them because these are souls that operate a whole other frequency, which is completely kind of doesn't follow the normal order of how regular humans kind of work.
And also, there might. I mean, I'm going to go so far as to say it seems that there may be. I think it's more likely that there may be tzaddiks from a perception of different people and what they see of being a lighthouse, an inspiration towards the path of that.
So they would look at someone else and say he's a tzaddik.
And then and that person might have somebody else that they see as a more something to strive for, maybe
Good.
Maybe an ancestor, whatever.
Excellent. Okay. Very good point. We're going to touch on that again soon. But hold on one second. I just want this to be important. Who can answer the question of the person's a tzaddik or not?
Only God.
Only God and only the person.
The person.
Only the person knows, am I battling certain things within me? Or I don't even have that battle. I just want to do the right thing instinctively. And my complete desire is to be connected with God. No one else can know that.
And in a way, anyone else that's
Important to remember.
opinion is by definition not a tzaddik, and they're just judging other people
Okay.
as opposed to judging themselves.
Interesting point. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. So we're not tzaddikim. So what's the next step? That's the first persona who deals with the struggle. Tzaddik doesn't have to struggle. Next persona who deals with the tzaddik struggle is someone who's called the Rasha. Now, Rasha, anyone? He said we won't translate.
The northern country.
Hey,
The country.
Russia. Okay, nothing to do with that country, especially since Russia is not a very pretty. Is not a very pretty kind of thing. There's not so much description about the tzaddik either. About the Rasha either in Tanya. You want to know why there's not so much description about the Rasha in Tanya? Because we don't need the Tanya to tell us how to be a Rasha. We can figure it out without the Tanya too. It's pretty easy to be a Rasha. What is the Rasha? Typically, Rasha in English, how would you translate? Rasha? Evildoer. A wicked person or something. Now, that's not really the definition of it. A Rasha he's not really wicked. He's just self-indulging. When he encounters the conflict of the animal soul and the godly soul, who does he listen to? The animals. Now, important to realize, what are we talking about here? There's a conflict. And we so far laid out one person who's called the tzaddik. The tzaddik doesn't have the conflict. One of the Rasha is not managing the conflict. He's not managing the conflict. It's all about managing the conflict. The Rasha is not managing the conflict. What do I mean he's not managing the conflict? A Rasha ultimately means there's a huge range within the Rasha. You could have a person who control, self-control. Are you the conflict with the godly soul and the animal soul? Are you in self-controlling and choosing the non-indulgent thing? Choosing that takes self-control, right? The Russia sometimes is not managing the conflict. He's not in control. And he slips. And he does the wrong thing. And he looks after himself. He says, this guy's gonna, I'll just grab that parking place before, and I'll make as if I didn't see him. Whatever. That is right there. Did you manage the conflict? Did you manage? Were you in control right there? Did you? No. You fell.
You did what you wanted.
You did what you wanted.
And you justified it to yourself.
Correct. You did the self-indulging thing. That's the Russia. The Russia is self-indulging. Now, the Russia is really anywhere from the guy who just does one sin. People say, well, what are you saying, Russia? You're saying a guy who sins once a month is a Russia. That's pretty extreme. Come on, once a day, let the guy slip up. You know what I mean? You can slip. Okay, you're gonna call him a Russia because he slipped once? That's not the point. The Russia means is he managing the conflict? It's like, can you be a little bit pregnant? Is there such a thing as being a little bit pregnant? There's no such thing as being a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. A little bit the same idea here. The Russia is either the conflict is being managed or the conflict is not being managed. And not being managed means that even if there's a one-time slip, on a one-time occasion, guess what? You're not managing the conflict. You don't have it under control. Okay, so I'll say, sometimes I'm doing good, sometimes I'm not doing good. And sometimes I'm doing good, sometimes I'm not. That sounds fun. That sounds like, we all have ups and downs. But to say that you're in control, to say that you're managing this conflict properly, you're not. It's almost like, when we're talking about illnesses, God forbid. If a person, you want to say someone's in remission. Someone's in remission, he had a terrible illness, and then they're in remission. Are they showing signs of that illness? Are there symptoms of the illness if they're in remission? If there are symptoms, you can't say they're in remission. They're not in remission. The illness is still present. So it's almost like the Russia, the very fact that there's sometimes going to be slip-ups, we're putting together in this realm of Russia, the person who's literally doing pretty well. He's usually doing 99% of the time, he's got it under control. 1% not. And we're putting in that same category the worst evildoer ever. He's the Russia. He's the ultimate Russia. Let's see it in the language of the time. Where are we? Text 4. Page 4. Chapter 11, like I said, deals with the Russia. Let's take a look. Lubov, I think you're up.
The category of Russia is subdivided into myriads of degrees. On one end of the spectrum, there is one in whom only on infrequent occasions does the evil prevail over the good. Contrary as the small city, and even then not all of the body falls under its dominion, but only a part of it. Namely, the animal soul prevails either in deed alone, in the commission of minor transgressions, not major ones, God forbid, or it may prevail in speech alone, or in thought alone, with contemplations of sin, after which the good that is in his godly soul asserts itself, and he is filled with the remorse over his transgression.
So let's stop there a second. So how often is this Russia sinning? Huh?
There's no proof.
Right, but it could even be someone who's only infrequent occasions does the evil prevail over good. So even the infrequently. How big are the sins that he's doing? Could be very small ones. Where is those sins taking place? And it could even be he's sinning either in action or in speech or even in thought. he doesn't have full control. His animal soul is, at sometimes he's slipping up and he's letting it control one of his outsides. He's letting it express itself. That's the Russia. Slip up, even at the most minor level. He had a thought about doing something very selfish. He indulged in a fantasy. He didn't even act on it. He didn't even speak about it. He just indulged in an act. He's not fully in control over this conflict here. The animal soul has reared its head and it's taken control. That sounds right. Sounds pretty familiar. Okay, you want to go a little? That's the one end of the spectrum. Continue.
On the other end of the spectrum, there is one in whom the evil prevails more strongly, and all three garments of evil clothe themselves in him, causing him to commit more heinous sins and to sin more frequently. Intermittently, he too experiences remorse. However, the good within him does not exert itself sufficiently to prevent him from sinning.
That's the other end of the spectrum. So the Russia could even be regretting after he did something wrong. He could be like, next time I'm going to try better. Okay, I messed up this time. Next time I'm going to have that self-control and not give in to my temptation. Absolutely. But it's like the person who's in recovery. If you're in recovery and you're in the program of recovery, I'll have one drink. I'll have one drink once a month. Once a year, I'll have one drink. Can you say you're in recovery right now? Or you've failed in recovery? You failed. Recovery means you don't have anything. You are 100% in control of this challenge known as addiction to whatever substance it may be. And therefore, the Russia, to summarize, is like this. This Russia is not in control. Now, when's he not in control? He's not in control all the time. He's not in control over all of his garments. And if you're not in control all the time over all of your garments of your soul, guess what? That would be called a Russia. Whoa. Okay. That sounds, I'm saying, that sounds, we got it. Now, what is going to be the rest of this lesson, which is really chapters 12, 13, and 14, and 15, are related to this third persona. Now, this third persona is known as the Beinoni. What's a Beinoni? Medium, mediocre. Actually, if you want to go to a coffee shop and you get the coffee in Israel and you say large, small, you say Benoni, you get the medium size. That's Benoni. Benoni is medium. Now, what does that mean? Are we talking about, what does that mean? We already just laid out what a Russia is. Now, just to point out, this term Beinoni is going to be super important because you want to know what the real name of Tanya is? Not Tanya. Tanya is the name of first word of the book, and it's become colloquially known as Tanya. The true name that the Alter Rebbe calls his book, he calls it the book of the Beinoni, the average person. A Beinoni is an average person. Not what the average person necessarily does, but what the average person can be. Tanya is looking to bring the average person, not a tzaddik, because that's not within your realm. Get over yourself. If you find yourself getting annoyed at yourself, why am I having temptations? Why am I having urges to do something not nice? Why did I even have an impulse that popped in my head to do something which was somewhat selfish? Guess what? Get over yourself. You're not a tzaddik. You're going to have those impulses. You've got an animal soul. Does that mean you need to act on those impulses? That's what Tanya's talking about. That's where Tanya is going to be talking about. That's when they're talking about the Tanya. The Beinoni is the person who has a constant conflict. He's got the animal soul fully. He's got the godly soul fully. But guess what? He manages the conflict. When? All the time. Where does he manage the conflict? Throughout all his elements of his soul's self-expression. In his thoughts, in his actions, and in his speech, he is managing this conflict perfectly. Now, just to point out, if I'm going to look at the Bainani now, if I'm going to see a Bainani, and he's managing this conflict constantly, let's take a look at text 5, and then we'll point out that point. Page 33. Amy, you want to read for us?
Sure.
Text 5.
The Benoni is one in whom the animal soul never attains enough power to conquer the small city, so as to clothe itself in the body and make it sin. That is to say, the 3 garments of the animal soul do not prevail over the godly soul to the extent of clothing themselves in the body. Only the 3 garments of the godly soul manifest themselves in the body.
Okay. Wow. That sounds like a pretty tall order, no?
Yes.
So it's really, we're talking about how often does the Bainani stay in control? How often does the Tanya say?
Always.
The animal soul never attains enough power to conquer the small city. Remember the small city? What's the small city? Us, ourselves. The animal soul never controls the person. Then he's always going to be in battle, and he wins that battle. Whoa, that's never. So what we're talking about is really the Bainani is the ultimate person who's. It's not about no matter how it's about no matter how you feel on the inside. The Bainani is controlling the outside. On the inside, does the Bainani have impulses which aren't so holy and pure? Absolutely. But on the outside, in his thought, in his speech, and his action, does he let any of those impulses express themselves? No. Now, I'll share with you a story. There was a well-known, in the Chabad world, a well-known Chassid who lived not very long ago, and he was a Bainani. How do I know he was a Bainani? Because a tzaddik said he was a Bainani. That's a pretty good referral, you know. He's a Bainani. He came to Montreal to. He had family in Montreal. Whatever. I'm not going to tell you too many details of exactly the individual because this is obviously pretty unique. And anyways, he had his 2 nephews. They used to exchange roommates. Like he used to have the room, one of them slept on the couch because when he arrived, he used to get the bed. So one slept on the couch, another one slept and he was his roommates. The kids asked tons of questions, and he had heard that someone had said about him that he's a Bainani. So this little kid came up to his uncle and he says, "Uncle, tell me, is it true that you're a Bainani?" The uncle said, "Of course it's true." He says, "You want to see?" Tells his little nephew, "Go sit on the couch now. And for 2 minutes, take a book of Psalms and focus on saying Psalms." So his little nephew goes, full of sincerity, goes on the couch, and for 2 minutes he's saying Psalms with all the fervor. He's saying the book of Tehillim, praying. Uncle stops him after 2 minutes. He says, "Did you have any thoughts of just looking out for your animal soul while you were?" He says, "No, I was focused on the book of Tehillim." He says, "Did you speak any negative things about people?" He says, "No, I was saying Tehillim." He says, "Did you do anything, very selfish during?" He says, "No." He says, "There we are. For 2 minutes, you were obeying." Now, what are we saying? I think it's not that. The reality is, the quality of what the Bainani is, I think we could all relate to. We could all relate to what that quality is. That quality of self-control and being in a state of mind where we're just going to be in control and we're going to make the right decisions because right now we are going to win that battle. I think what scares us about the Beinoni's description is the quantity. That the quantity that the Beinoni is always getting it right. Whoa. That's pretty hectic. You want to tell me I'm going to control myself 70% of the time? Okay, I'll handle it. 100% of the time, I'm always going to. That's intense. I'm not a Beinoni. I can't. And let's take a look at the Tanya. Then takes us through a journey. And Tanya is going to point out something to us super important. Tanya is going to tell us, guess what? You've got this in you. This is not something foreign to you. The Beinoni, the key concept of the Beinoni is it's not out of your reach. Every single person has this ability to do a Beinoni. But how? That sounds pretty tough. Sounds pretty tough to always win and always exhibit self-control and always make the right decision and never give in to temptations and never give in to those pleasures. Even at a place of thought, that's crazy. That's really hard. I shouldn't fantasize. Fine, I won't speak. I shouldn't even fantasize about doing something wrong. I shouldn't even start thinking about how I'm going to just, I would love to eat that piece of chocolate cake for this just or I don't know, maybe get back at my friend who's just being nasty to me, and I won't do anything. Just even think about that. Tanya says, "This is not foreign. You've got this in you." Let's take a look. Text 6, page 33. Adam, we're back at you.
Definition of a Beinoni. Beinoni is one in whom the animal soul never attains enough power to conquer the small city.
Wait.
Oh, should be.
Yeah,
It's
6.
34.
Page 30, yeah, 33, 34. Yeah. No, okay. Yeah.
Although the godly soul of the Beinoni does not hold undisputed sovereignty over the small city, nevertheless, the animal soul is unable to implement its desire by clothing itself in the limbs of the body.
Okay. So what's the secret of the animals of the Beinoni? Right? The godly soul doesn't have sovereignty over the small city. Nevertheless, the animal soul is not going to be able to win control over you. What's the secret? Continue.
Because the brain naturally rules over the heart. For man was so created from birth that every person may, with the power of the will in his brain, restrain himself and control the drive of his heart's lust, preventing his heart's desires from finding expression in deed, word, or thought.
Okay, let's stop there a second. You just read it. Because the brain naturally rules over the heart. For man was so created from birth. I was teaching once a group of teenagers in school. These girls who had, studied Tanya before, and I said to them, who has their mind controlling their heart? Who experiences ma shalit al alev, that your mind controls your heart? So each one said, I wish, I'm working on that. Da, da, da. So I responded to them. I said, hold on a second. Were you born? If you're born, our Tanya tells us here, for man was so created from birth. It's natural. What's natural? It's natural that you should control your impulses. It's natural that you should mind rule over your heart, that you don't give in to those temptations of your heart. You want to know it's natural? When you're speaking to someone and you have the urge and desire to cough, and you just cough in front of their face. Who does that? We all have impulse control. We all do. And we use that impulse control. Either it's because of social circumstances, or it's because of, people will look at me in the wrong way if I don't control myself, or because we know that that's bad for our career, or it's bad for our personal life. We control ourselves. We all do. We all have impulse control. It's something natural in us. That's what differentiates us and makes us human. An animal is an animal. It's instinctive. It acts on instinct. A human being, by his very nature, has instinct control, has impulse control. He can control his impulses. I remember once I was sitting in a car by a shopping center. It was in like in Golders Green area. So outside one of the shops, and this woman was walking with her kid, and she steps outside the shop, and she walks with her kid, and she goes into the car right next to where I was parked, and she sits down, and as she closes the door, she starts shouting at her kid. Now, when did the desire within her to shout at her kid start? When did she want to shout at her kid? How early? When she was in the store. Well, guess what? The moment she starts shouting at her kid, she looks at me. She noticed I was watching. She stops shouting at her kid. She starts driving. She drives away. Started in the store, and then and started again in the car. And the moment she saw me, as if nothing. As you said, she probably, as soon as she carried on driving, the kid's difficult. She started shouting at the kid again. What just happened? How much Tanya did this woman have to study in order to control her not making a whole scene in the shopping market and not seeing the rabbi see her shout at her kid and feeling uncomfortable? How much Tanya did she have to study? I don't know. I don't know if she studied it every time. Did she have to study Tanya? No. Self-control. We all do it. We all do it at some level, and that's what the Tanya is telling you. You were born that way. You've got impulse control in you. The Tanya is saying you'll always have the struggle. You absolutely will always have the struggle. The Beinani is always going to have the struggle of this animal soul, the Nefesh HaBahamis, saying, do this in this and this way. Do it the wrong way. Do it the selfish way. Do it the instinctive way. Do something inappropriate. And that's conflict, that urge, that temptation will always be there. But the Tanya tells us, Moach shalit al alev, the person instinctively has, a person by the nature of him being human, is born with the ability to control his impulses. Now, let's just finish up where you're up to, Adam, from where you're up to.
Still, he is not seen to try to get off. The godly soul's dominance is limited to the 3 garments alone. Tanya chapter 12.
Beautiful. So is this person who is never committing a sin, who is never committing a sin in action, never speaking negatively about something, never thinking even about something horrible and doing something selfish and mean, is he a tzaddik? Absolutely not. So if I'm going to see him walking down the street, can I think he's a tzaddik? Would I think he's a tzaddik? He's getting absolutely everything right. But really, within his world, is he a tzaddik? Absolutely not. He's constantly fighting the battle and winning the battle, constantly exerting his impulse control, his ability to be in control of his thoughts, his speech, and his actions, his garments of his soul, to not allow that animal to express itself.
But he or she also knows that he's not falling prey to his wants and impulses. So he's able to observe his own progress in the right direction.
Again, say it again.
He's able to observe and he's familiar with the fact that he's had these impure thoughts and raw desires or cravings or whatever it may be. But he knows, he may be the only person that knows, but he knows that he's not falling prey to them. So he gets that added reward of fulfilling himself by doing the right thing.
Correct. He's the only one who really knows. Now, I want to
He's
just
the
point
only
out.
one that has to know.
Absolutely right. Or either it's not
When I speak-
relevant.
when I speak to church, there was somebody in a conversation trying to help them not do something wrong.
Right.
And then it's another myth.
Okay. Good. So again, he's from. Yeah, it's not relevant. Okay. A true point. Now let's just think a second. I want to just point out. We're talking about action, speech, and thought. What are we talking about? Thought. Thought. Not even engaging the animal soul in the place of thought. What am I talking about? Amy, do you know the directions from here to Evans? Yes. Were you thinking about that a minute ago before I asked you that?
No.
No. So it was in your knowledge. That was something that you knew, but it wasn't something you were engaging. Thought, what we're talking about is the thought of actively engaging a thought. We're not even talking about the thought of an impulse thought that pops in my mind when where it could be I'm driving down the street and someone cuts me off, and there's an impulse because I've got an animal inside me, and not an animal, because I've got an animal soul inside me. What does that mean? I've got a part of me which is instinctively selfish. The instinctively selfish side of me says, what an idiot. Look how you just cut me off. That will happen to a Benoni too. The next thing that you're going to say, that's an instinctive thought. The next thing is the thought where I engage the thought, where the thought that we've been speaking about until now, which is an activity of thought. Am I going to start thinking now about people are so rude and so disgusting. Maybe I should see if I can cut him off again, or starting to engage with this whole thought process of how my selfish side has been wounded, and now how I'm going to start kind of getting caught up in the drama of all of that. That's thought that we're talking about. That's that activity of thought. The impulse of thought will come to a Benoni too. The impulse is there. The tzaddik doesn't have an impulse of selfishness. The Benoni has an impulse of selfishness. Can a Benoni get insulted? Absolutely, he can get insulted. Still got an ego. But when he gets insulted, is the first thought he's going to have in saying, this person is so mean, this person, this person, that's got no place. That's starting to think negatively about someone. That's starting to think, to get caught up in that person, he wanted something from me. I'm definitely not going to help him. That's the engaging thought that we're talking about here, where we start, after the impulse is there, a person now opens that up and starts engaging with that negative thought. That's the kind of thought that Benoni's got under control. He's not going to get dramatic. He's not going to start making this into, was that weiter? I'm not going to start getting caught up in this negative thought process. I'm controlling myself, even my thoughts. I'm not going to allow my thoughts to go to places which are expressing my animal soul. I don't let it go there. My thoughts I've got control over them. I'm controlling the impulse of my thoughts 100%. Does it sound in vogue today? Controlling your thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah?
Maybe I don't understand what invoke means.
Is that in fashion today?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So to a certain extent, I think it is, and to a certain extent, I think that today it's like whatever's going in your own world, you're entitled to have all these kinds of thoughts. When you're saying, as soon as you're having those kinds of thoughts and you start fantasizing about something which is negative, which is just an expression of your own ego, that's giving rise and expression to your animal thoughts, to your animal soul, and Benoni doesn't allow that to happen. It's within your control to control that. Benoni's in control. He's in the driver's seat of his life. Give a nice story, which I think brings out this idea. There was a chassid of the Mezritcher Maggid, The Mizitra Maggid, the Alter Rebbe, who's the author of the Tanya, his teacher was known as the Maggid of Mezrich. He was the second master within the Hasidic world. He was the student of the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of Hasidic. This student came to the Maggid of Mezrich, to his Rebbe, and he says, Rebbe, I'm struggling with inappropriate thoughts. I struggle with, I've constantly been berated with all kinds of, kind of barraged with all kinds of thoughts which, geez, don't get stuck in my head, all kinds of inappropriate things. Help me. What should I do? I don't know. Huh? That should be plugged in. Is it not? Ah, it's not plugged in. Sorry, one sec.
That's what Barrow said.
This is a I don't know when to plug it in.
He was right.
How's that? Yeah. Check, just make sure. One sec. Yeah. Okay, getting back. So this Zev Volf, he's struggling. This chassid is struggling with his thoughts, and he asks the Rebbe, "What should I do?" The Rebbe says, "I want you to travel to another one of my disciples. His name is Reb Zev Volf of Zhytomyr. People know the Ukrainian map these days. And go to him. He'll be able to help you with the struggle that you're having." Anyways, he pulls up Russian winter, Ukrainian winter, whatever, and he showed up at his door. He knocks on.
No.
Guys, you're on mute or not anymore, but we can't
Not
hear
in
you.
mute. Okay.
Oh,
now,
now, yes, now good. Thank you.
good. We lost you. Okay, so Reb Zev Volf, he tells him, you want to struggle with your inappropriate thoughts, I want you to go visit a certain chassid who will help you with the struggle. He shows up in Zhytomyr, he knocks on Reb Volf's door, it's middle of winter in Russia, freezing cold. And he knocks, he hears there's someone inside, and guess what? Reb Volf doesn't open the door. And he knocks, and Reb Volf doesn't open the door, and he's like, what is this? Anyways, Reb Volf doesn't open the door, and he sleeps on the entrance of his house. And the next morning, Reb Volf opens the door and he says, "Welcome to my house." And he invites him in, and he takes care of him. And for 2 days, he's having the most lovely stay in Reb Volf's house, and he's feeding him, and he's being a wonderful host. The 2 days, the chassid says, "Hold on a second. I've got 2 questions for you. First of all, you should know that I arrived in your house and I knocked on your door. You didn't open, and I slept the whole night on entrance to your house. Second of all, I have to tell you why I came. The Rebbe sent me to your house because I'm struggling with my thoughts. I'm struggling with inappropriate thoughts. And he said I should come to you. You'll have some advice." Reb Volf says, "On that first night, I answered your question." He says, just because something's knocking on the door, it doesn't mean you need to open the door. That's what we're talking about. Just because something's knocked, then the Beinani is the Nefesh HaBahamis knocking, is the animal soul knocking, is he saying, think about this selfish thought now. Get carried away in the drama here. Is it knocking? Absolutely it's not. Is it? Does that mean you have to open up the door and give it a seat at the table and say, okay, let's stop thinking about this. Let's unpack this. How my ego is affected. How this person is really so nasty, or how, I don't know, this fantasy that I've got about something which is inappropriate, I'm going to start venting. Just because it's knocking, that doesn't mean you need to open the door. Just because it's knocking, it doesn't mean you give it a seat to the table. That's what Reb Volf taught him. That's exactly what the Beinani is experiencing. He's got his thought under control. His impulses, even at a place of thought, he's in control. He's managing the conflict at the level of thought, the level of speech, and the level of action. So it's like, sometimes we think about the these days you have pop-ups that come up on the computer. So once you're in the middle of something and pops up. So sometimes it's like, I don't even know why it pops up. It's from your browsing. Sometimes it's like something seems so random. But sometimes they're inappropriate, these pop-ups, right? So a pop-up, the fact that it pops up, everyone has pop-up. The fact you've got an animal soul means you can have a pop-up. But how long is it going to take till you click the X on the pop-up? That's the difference between how you're managing the conflict. The baby popped up, it's gone. Sometimes the pop-up becomes like a screensaver. You're like, oh, it popped up. Let's yeah. That's where the thought that the thought you're not controlling the thought. That's the difference. The pain, the pop-up comes up, the pop-up's there. The X goes off straight away. The question is, do you allow that pop-up to become something larger than that? The guy who's lying in bed and he sets his alarm for 5 o'clock in the morning, he wants to get up. So says, I woke up in the morning, 5 o'clock. My godly souls, get up, you start your day. And he's got an animal soul said, it's just I'm pretty tired. Just, give yourself another half an hour. Bed's really comfortable. It's cold outside. Give yourself another half an hour. And he says, guess what? I won. Just 7 hours later, I got out of bed. I won. I got out of bed. Just 7 hours later. Is that called winning? No, because the battle was there. But he fantasized and he allowed it to play out the way the enemy says the impulse to stay in bed is there. Absolutely. But am I going to entertain that thought? Am I going to give it a seat at the table to start really allowing it to become part of the discussion? No way. I'm not even entertaining that thought. I'm taking control over that thought. Make sense? Okay. So, I think it's important just before we even, let's take a look at text 7 and then just one other point just to clarify this. Text 7, page 34, continuing describing the Balaam. Nathaniel.
Impulsive thoughts of sin can manage to rise to his mind. However, he will not entertain them willingly. No sooner does it arise than he thrusts it aside with both hands and averts his mind from it. The instant he realizes that it is an evil thought, he will refuse to accept it willingly, even as a subject for mere fantasy, and will certainly not entertain the notion of acting on it, God forbid, or even speaking of it. One who willingly indulges in such thoughts is deemed a rasha at that moment, but the Benoni is not a rasha even for a single moment.
Wow. Let's take a look how that plays out between man and fellow. Text 8, page 36. Giorgio.
So too in matters between man and his fellow, as soon as there rises from his heart to his mind any animosity or hatred, God forbid, or jealousy, anger, or a grudge, and their like, he will bar them from his mind and will. On the contrary, his mind will prevail over and dominate the feelings of his heart to do the exact opposite. And he will conduct himself towards his fellow with kindness, displaying disproportionate love towards his fellow. Even when extremely pained, he will not be provoked into anger, God forbid, or take revenge, God forbid.
Wow. Okay. So, it sounds like, don't you wish all your friends were baiting him? This is, he's a pretty good guy. This is it's important to realize the baiting is not about how religious you are. That Tanya is describing someone. It's not about religious. He's the quintessential mensch. He's the guy who's not going to get stuck in the drama with it. Something happened. He might have even been offended. I'm not going to start getting caught up in that. Something needs to be done. He needs to move on. Get on with it. Do what you need to do. And the in terms of, let's say, it's often that we think it's about it's really a healthy person. The healthy person is the guy who's, this is a good, strong, healthy person who's really in control of he's controlling his impulses. He's not getting stuck in his head, not getting stuck in starting to places which aren't. This is what we're describing here in this description of the Beinoni. Let's give ourselves a Beinoni exercise, okay? Page 35. Let's do learning exercise 2. Okay? Let's read together. For the next 60 seconds, let's picture in our mind and repeat a phrase in our head. For the purpose, we can use anything, but we're going to use, this is the phrase, okay? Keep in mind the picture of a Torah scroll and say to yourself, it is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it. Picture in your mind a Torah scroll, it's a tree of life for those who hold fast to it. Okay? Try not to fight the system. You can think about other things. Starting now. Anything else that pops into your mind, push away the thought. Okay. Well, that's a long time, huh? Okay. By a show of hands, is there anyone who had 0 distractions, was able to focus 100% on this Torah scroll, being 0 distractions? This is a very open conversation.
I play a little game that allowed it to be alternating between 2 different scrolls.
Okay, so that's what kept your mind focused. Okay, so that's how you held your attention. Anyone else had 0 distractions, or some distractions, many distractions? Where would you put yourself, Lupo?
Not many, maybe little bit.
Little bit.
But I also imagine that it's moving to not shift my attention.
So you fought off those distractions.
I think yes.
Okay,
But
not sure.
if I had 1 minute,
You're not sure you would have lost it. Okay, good. Yeah, some distractions. Anyone gave up?
That also suggests that maybe somewhat based on what we were talking about, that's a little bit of not giving much mental attention to the distraction, letting the godly soul focus more on what's happening.
Exactly right. Anyone have a lot of distractions?
Yeah, 55 seconds, 57 seconds of attention towards the scroll, whether it's moving or whatever. And then for a fraction of a second, the donut popped in and didn't get any attention.
Good.
That's managing it.
Well, if you had no distractions, you're doing really well. If you had some distractions, you had a lot of distractions. Guess what? You're a healthy person. A healthy person in the course of focusing on something which might be spiritual, godly, whatever it is, or just anything which is just, you can have selfish thoughts that pop in. That's normal. And part of what we've learned here in the Tanya is powerful, realizing if you have those impulsive thoughts which are inappropriate, which are wrong, should you beat yourself up about it? Absolutely not. You want to know why? Because you are human. You have an animal soul. That's part of your anatomy. Your soul's you've got an animal soul. You're not a tzaddik. You haven't gotten rid of your animal soul. That's fine. Question is, how are you managing it? And are you giving it a seat at the table? And the Tanya is serious about perfection. But what kind of perfection? Not perfection on the insides. As we said, that's the perfection of a tzaddik. We can't be a tzaddik. Tanya is serious about perfection, each one of us being able to be fully in control of what? Your outsides. That's expression. Your thoughts, your speeches, and your action. You've got the control. You're 100% in the driver's seat. And those impulses might be there. The question is if you're giving them a seat at the table. Okay. So let's kind of just a quick recap of what we've covered so far. Okay. I need your help for this. What is a tzaddik? What's a tzaddik based on what we've learned tonight?
Godly soul driven.
Godly soul driven. Give me a little more. What's a tzaddik?
Doesn't have an animal soul.
There's no conflict. He's only motivated by one thing only, the desire to be connected with God. Beautiful. What's a Rasha? All animal?
Someone who at least sometimes fails to manage the conflict between the two and falls into temptation to the animal soul.
Beautiful. He's not managing this conflict, properly or fully. He slips sometimes. What's a Bainani?
Someone who manages it always.
Got the conflict always, but he manages it perfectly. Okay? Is a tzaddik fundamentally different from your average person? Yes. Tzaddik is, his soul makeup is different from your average person. He doesn't have that animal soul. Okay. Is it within your control to be a tzaddik? Can you become a tzaddik?
No, you won't be born a tzaddik.
What we've seen so far in Tanya is that a person within his control, he's not within his control to completely change over his insides, what he wants, what completely to the point where he gets rid of his animal soul completely. He will always have some kind of impulse, might lessen it, he might become more aligned, but he'll always have at some point a selfish impulse within. Something doesn't even exist within his world. Okay? Is the Bainani fundamentally different from the average person?
No.
He is average. Let's go back just to see what we saw. Sorry, not what we go ahead. Text 9, page 38. Let's read together. This is super, super important. All together. Text 9, page 38. Now the state of being a Bainani, all together. Now the state of being a Bainani is attainable by every person, and each person can strive after it. For every person can, at any moment, be a Bainani. Because a Bainani does not abhor evil. That is something that is subject to the feelings of the heart and may vary from time to time. But a Bainani adheres to the injunction to turn away from evil and do good. In actual practice, in deed, speech, and thought. And it's in these matters that everyone is given the choice, ability, and freedom to act, speak, and think as he chooses, even when it is diametrically opposed from the desires of the heart. The first line, now the state of being a Bainani is attainable by every person. Bainani is a state, it's a state of being. You can be right now in a state of being a Bainani. You're fully in control. The Bainani, as he stands now, is fully in control and will always be in control. It's completely within your ability. That's what the Tanya is teaching us. Now, just to wrap up, let's do this last exercise together. You've seen these stories. I'm sure you've seen the good news stories where they show up. This guy who actually saw something recently. Really nice story. Someone found something, and it was basically something enormous that he found, and he basically returned it to his owner, and he had his few minutes of fame, and everyone was kol hakavod, he did it. And then they asked the person, "Did you have a thought to maybe keep it for yourself?" So often in the stories, no, I would never entertain it. So let's take a look at this common story, but look at it with the twist, okay? So page 39. An old lady was riding a bus, carrying her groceries and her life savings of $20,000 in cash in her purse to bring to the bank. When she got off at her stop, she was horrified to realize that she had remembered her groceries but left her purse on the bus. She immediately called the police, who called the bus company to ask if anyone had found the purse. An hour later, a man showed up to the police station with the purse and all of the money. Needless to say, the old lady was relieved and thanked the man profusely. The local news heard about the story and wanted to interview the hero who returned the money. Were you tempted to keep it, they asked. Yes, he answered. The moment I found the money, the first thing that popped into my head was to pay off my car and to take a trip to the Bahamas. I had to literally force myself to go down to the police station and turn it in. I'm assuming that the man in this story is expressing his typical reaction to moral dilemmas. Is he a tzaddik, a rasha, or a beinoni? You say a beinoni. Why? Okay. He's managing the struggle.
That doesn't mean that he's not struggling. He's managing.
Good. Anyone think he's a rasha? You all agree he's a beinoni. What about the fact that he was tempted to keep it?
Oh, because it's natural.
Because that's not exactly right. I would say this person's a beinoni. The fact that he wanted to keep it, that's natural. When you see something, you've got a whole load of bills and expenses. The moment that he started thinking, like, getting a little bit carried away, he's like, no, if I take 15,000, I put it towards this, and I take 5,000, I put it towards that, and like maybe we can actually balance. That's already heading to Russia terrain. He's losing this battle right now. He's starting to indulge with thought of that selfish response here, of the animal soul starting to really, he's getting engaged in the activity of thought of the animal soul. The temptation, the instinctive temptation to maybe want to keep it, that's natural. The beinoni manages that and he says, then I'm not going to start getting a seat at the table. Okay, our homework for this coming week. Lesson 1, this past week, we became conscious of this inner battle, this inner conflict, which is constantly playing out within us between the godly soul and the animal soul. Stay conscious of that conflict, and let's use this week to use the tool which we've learned for impulse control, to moach shalit al halev, let the mind rule the heart, to constantly be aware of keeping ourselves in check, not only at a place of action, not only a place of speech, but even our thoughts. Let's be a beinoni for a week. Your homework, okay? Got your work cut out for you. Next week we'll talk about what that experience is like. So,
but before we leave on this exercise, where is the borderline? Because if we go back to the text 4,
good.
Where it says that it prevails in speech alone or in thought alone. So where is because in the example there is a thought that is not goes the line, is popping into someone else already part and leading to a remorse or even thinking about it, because also after he said he's filled with remorse over his transgression. Is this transgression the popping in the head or not at that level yet?
You're talking about the Russia.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Where is the borderline? Where is?
So you got cut off a little bit. You want to say it one more time, the question?
So it's not clear to me where is the borderline. If we look at the text of Tanya that we had in text 4, the focus is on the thought of transgression and the remorse that comes after the thought of transgression.
Good.
Here, in the example on page 39, there is a thought that is not Goldie. There is not the remorse, but there is the thought. Where is the borderline?
Good. That's the question is ultimately, what point does it go from a place of instinctive thought to a place of an activity of thought? And That's not always such
Okay.
an easy, that's not always such an easy say like this or like this. But when we find ourselves being engaged within the activity of thought, that's the place that we're talking about that should be within your control. The instinct of the moment, if it comes into your head and without you being aware or whatever it is, before you even have a chance to take control, that's not what we're talking about. That's everyone's going to experience that at one level or next. The question is, once I've become aware that I'm thinking that right now and it's popped in my head, what am I going to do with that now? Am I going to push it into the door a little bit further, spend a few more moments with it, right? Like we said Jimmy Carter last week. They asked him, did you ever have an affair? See, he said, I lusted in my heart. What kind of nonsense is that? From a Jewish perspective, you're basically describing the human condition. Yes, you had a moment of lust in your heart. Does that mean you're a bad person? Not at all. Did you fantasize about that? Oh, now you're talking about something that you should have been controlled. The garment of your soul, did you let the animal soul express itself in a place of thought? If you did, then you gave in and you didn't manage the conflict properly at that moment. Okay. Georgia, answers your question?
Yes, totally. It's the active thought, not the instinctive thought itself.
Correct. Any other questions? We're at a little over time. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you very
beautiful
much.
week
Next
ahead and much success in the exercise.
Thank you.
Lila Tov.